So I just watched Honkai Starrail's patch 2.5 livestream yesterday, and after watching it, I've seen quite a few opinions flying around about different features that were shown in the livestream. And I wanted to share my opinion on some things about why I think a lot of these are actually good for the future of the game, and why I just think Honkai Starrail's future overall just looks really promising. The first thing I mainly saw people talking about was the banner system, and the idea of having about 6 banners in a patch, which definitely sounds like a lot. And the main thing I've seen people really talk about is the fact that it's going to be either like an expensive patch, or it really incentivizes people to want to pull more, or that they can't get all the characters, like they're going to be missing out on a lot of them. And for a player like me who's been playing since launch, this problem doesn't exist. I have most of the characters. I have spent some money on the game to allow myself to get most of the characters, but like, you know, for example, with the next patch coming, we have the Robin rerun, the Kafka rerun, the Black Swan rerun. I have all 3 of those characters, so I'm going all in on Fei Xiao, right? So this problem just doesn't exist for me. But for newer players who may not have any of the characters, or just have a very few of those characters, they might be wanting to get all of them or most of them, including the new one. And to that, I completely understand. But in my opinion, I think having many different reruns happening at once is very healthy for the longevity of the game, because it means more characters will come back around sooner instead of having to wait for having 1 or 2 limited reruns at a time, you know? Because I remember back, I'm not too sure if Genshin's reruns have changed necessarily, but you would basically be praying that your character would come back if you weren't playing at the time of their banner release, or never actually got them. Like, I could have swore I heard that like some characters, like maybe Eula or something, could take up to 2 years to even get a rerun. I could be mistaken on that, but like even a year at best is like still a long time to wait for a character to come back. Whereas like even since about Penacony started, we've already had, now this will be the 2nd time Kafka's reran. At least maybe there's other characters that have rerun it multiple times as well, but like this just goes to show that within a few patches we've already had 2 reruns of a single character. Yes, you won't be able to get every character every patch, but I don't think you should. You should have the patience and self-control to not have to get every character that appears in a patch at all times, if you know what I mean. So overall, I think this will just be a positive change, and this will allow people to more safely consider which characters they want without having a fear of waiting years or just a long period of time without having to get a character again. The next thing that I personally am looking forward to, I don't think I've seen too many people talk about it, but it's the story difficulty changer. This might not sound like a lot to most people, and honestly, I could just be overreacting, but I actually really like this change, because I'm someone who really gets excited to see all the new enemies or bosses that are in a patch. I love fighting new enemies. I love trying to, you know, learn new strategies or deal with different mechanics or whatnot, you know what I mean? So when I see new enemies, I always get excited, right? And so especially with the bosses. And so when I see this and I see that they have an option to lower the difficulty, what I think is this gives them the opportunity to make story bosses harder than they might consider doing in the first place, because now they don't have to worry about their casual audience being upset or annoyed or cut off from being able to complete the story, because now they just have an easier option to do. It's like, oh, are you struggling with this boss? Well, just turn down the difficulty. You can still get past the story, right? Yes, we'll still have the harder, you know, incarnations of them in like the rotating game modes like Memory of Chaos or Apocalyptic Shadow, right? But even still, when I play through story, I don't mind having a challenge. I do like being challenged in the story. I think the Sunday boss fight was a pretty good example of that, of like, if you weren't doing the mechanics properly, or if you didn't have well-built characters, you could actually lose that fight. I've seen it happen. I've seen some people struggle in that fight for multiple hours in some cases. Mind you, those are accounts that might not be very well built, or they don't have a lot of experience with the game, but you know what I mean, right? But yeah, no, I just think this change could be a good sign that we could be getting more difficult story, even more so if they decide to raise the level cap. I don't know if they will do that like they did with Genshin, but if they decide to raise, you know, maybe the character cap to 90 and the game gets harder, you know, higher stat ranges or something like that. I don't know. I just think it's kind of an exciting change. I think it could lead to much more impactful story fights. Because I think other than Sunday, the only other fight that I remember being pretty difficult was on release or pre-patch Aventurine. Aventurine, when you fought him, he was doing mad damage. Like that, they had to patch him because people were struggling. He could do like sometimes around almost half your HP on some of your characters with like AoE, as well as lowering like your ult gauge. He was a problem, and he would constantly spam like his dice mechanic. He could be really problematic, especially if you didn't have Acheron or Jingliu. Dude, he could screw you up. You could screw you up. You know, I don't want another case of them having to patch a character down because they're too hard, obviously, unless they're absolutely overtuned. But like, I want harder fights. I don't want to have to sacrifice that just, you know, for the other players who aren't able to properly build or aren't able to properly, you know, just get through the story. So anyways, I'm rambling, but this is a change I'm excited for. And finally, the last thing I want to talk about is the actual main story quest itself. And I want to just express that I've been very glad that there hasn't really been, in my opinion, a filler patch for Honkai Starrail, at least story-wise. Like, the only one I can confidently say that I think it's been a filler patch was probably back in patch 1.1 back in the day, because it just didn't have any sort of quest. We went from, you know, launch day, you have all of Belobog, you have all the first third of the Law Fu, and then 1.1 comes around and it's like you have the Silverwolf story quest, or the Silverwolf character quest, I think, and then maybe another character quest. Like, there just wasn't a lot happening there. The events weren't very interesting. Like, that's probably the only real patch I could consider filler. Everything else has either had a main story quest or a Trailblaze continuance quest, which in itself is still technically part of the main story. They always introduce new plot elements, whether that's like the Heliobi from 1.5, characters like Dr. Ratio, Ruan Mei, or in the recent 2.4 quest, Return to the Law Fu, which I personally think has been super fun and interesting, and I actually so far prefer it over the first time we visited the Law Fu. This returning quest is super fun. Fei Xiao is a super interesting character. I like that we're seeing other captains from the other Xianzhou ships. I think the interactions between Yunli and Yangqing were super fun and interesting. So overall, I'm just really glad that the main story quests that people are assuming are going to be filler have not been filler, at least in my opinion. I think every story quest has been great so far. I also just really enjoy the concept of going back to previous planets and slowly kind of seeing the universe grow over time and seeing the effects we've had on the other planets so far. Like in the 2.4 story quest, they showed us some Intellitrons on the Law Fu that were attending, I believe, for the War Dance, and you know, that shows that like our effect that we've had on Penacony already shown by people, you know, venturing out of Penacony. And in the 2.5 trailer, we see characters from Belobog also in the War Dance attending the Law Fu because they've seemingly been able to travel other planets again. I think that's super cool. It adds to the world building, it adds to the story. It shows that we actually have an effect on the world. We're not just forgetting these characters, like leaving them and moving on, you know? It makes me excited and look forward to more quests, attending more planets, because, you know, expanding the roster, more opportunities to see older characters again, maybe return to other planets, maybe other people visit new planets with us. Like, I believe we're going to be going to Amphorius with like characters like Black Swan. I'm looking forward to that, you know? So it has me excited. But yeah, that's just kind of all I really wanted to touch on. I just kind of wanted to share my opinion. And like, I think there's been a bit of doom and gloom with maybe the banners and being like, oh, there's, you know, it's too much, it's too much, stuff like that. I think people are overreacting a little bit, you know what I mean? I think people are getting a bit lost in the sauce. And I honestly think pretty much a lot of the changes coming in 2.5 are for the betterment and of the longevity for the game in itself, and are just things I'm looking forward to. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Feel free to join the Discord. We have a lot of fun over there. I just recently hosted a little Kahoot event, which was fun. Like the video if you like it, and thanks for watching. I'll see you around.